Okay, great. Okay, so the first thing I would love you to do after welcoming you all is to just ask respectfully if you wouldn't mind just popping yourself on mute. I'll tell you why, and my team will let you know as well. I have a noise distraction thing, so if I hear any background noise, my brain decides to focus in on that noise rather than what I should be doing. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you. It will help us all to focus, I hope, as well. Okay, so I don't need to tell most of you that safeguarding is our shared responsibility. Most of us have worked in schools or some other education organisation where you've had safeguarding training and it's talked about a lot. I know that part of the process to be one of our tutors, you have to have a safeguarding qualification as well. But then after that, how do you keep updated? How do you know what's going on when you're out of schools? And I think it's one of the things that we're really passionate about at Elite Tutors, and that is just making sure that people are up to date and they have the same level of professional development that you might in schools, certainly in regard to keeping children safe. Now, unfortunately, the government have left tutors and the whole tutoring industry at this stage in 2025 out of any documentation or acknowledgement. But we really feel strongly that as a tutor, and I'll talk more a little bit about that, as a tutor, we're really in kind of prime position really to receive those safeguarding disclosures or have a closer eye on students. So this evening, what I would love you to have as you leave this evening, I really want you to walk away with updated knowledge on harms to children. I really want you to walk away with some updated knowledge on the prevent strategy. Now, I know that that was talked about quite a lot in schools a while ago, but there are some updates to that. So I want you to be really clear about what those are and how to look for signs in students. And then I also want you to walk away with knowing what to do during a disclosure, not afterwards, not about how to report it, but actually at the time. I'll talk more about that later. And we also have a new process within Elite Tutors for reporting safeguarding disclosures and concerns. So I just want to run that past you as well and show you what that looks like. Hopefully, all of that won't take more than half an hour, 40 minutes. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat. If I'm able to, and if time allows, I'll try and answer some of those at the end of the session. If I don't get to that, then what we'll do is we'll use all those questions because they're probably questions that everybody else has, and pop them in an email to everybody with the answers. Obviously, generalized ones, not specific. So, as I say, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat there. That would be superb. I'm just checking that everybody's in because I heard the doorbell go. There we go. Okay, I think that's everybody. Okay, all right. So, so safeguarding is our shared responsibility. I've just lost my screen, so that's not very helpful. Bear with me 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So what's new in Kixie 2025? There have been some changes. There have been some adjustments to the language that we use when we're describing particular neurodivergent people, and I'll explain some of those changes next. So it's no surprise that online safety is outlined in the new updates for new risks. So the guidance now explicitly names misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories as types of harmful online content. I was looking at Prevent earlier, and you can you can report harmful online content directly to Prevent if you feel it necessary. With the rapid changes in AI, it's no surprise that there are kind of new harms that are coming to light. And one of the kind of questions around what misinformation is and what disinformation is, it's kind of new, although probably heard of in isolation. So they're new phrases in this document. And the difference really is that misinformation is false or misleading information that's shared by somebody who believes it to be true. They're not trying to cause any harm, but what they pass on is still misleading to other people. So, an example of that might be a parent shares an inaccurate health claim on social media, thinking that it might help others, but it's actually not factually correct. And disinformation is false information that's deliberately created to spread or cause harm, mislead, or manipulate people. It's intentional. So, an example of that might be a fake news story is published online to influence how people vote or to stir up fear about a particular group of people. And the way that I remember that is misinformation may be mistaken, and disinformation is deliberate. So you can tell that my background is working with students who need that bit of extra kind of thing to hang on to if their memory isn't quite as sharp as it might want to be. So that's how I remember those two new phrases in that document. I think, the action for tutors, all these are obviously, Kixie is designed for schools, and really we have to think about our application as tutors. I think, as I said before, tutoring, it's a really privileged position to be in. It's a position where we create spaces, we create safe spaces, we create spaces where children are happy to take a risk or to make a mistake without fear of retribution. And that kind of context really does create the right context for disclosures. So I think really be aware of that and really be aware of how students' behavior might change. I kind of talked about this, touched on it briefly earlier, that we do create those safe spaces, but also we have a very close-up view of that particular student. And if you imagine, I think most of us on the call this evening have worked in, big groups with big groups of children as a class teacher or language teacher. And we, a child's change in personality and demeanor may not be detected in a big group of, say, 30 students, but on a one-to-one, we really do have that up close view on a student. And so the things to look out for with these new risks that have been identified are things like distress in a student, change in behavior that could be linked to exposure to these new kind of online harms. I would say the same for AI. So, generative AI is also noted as a new harm. This, I imagine, will rapidly change over the course of the next year or two. One of the things that I find quite alarming personally is, and the things to look out for as a tutor, is the relationship a child might have with an AI. And I never thought I would be saying this, but this is the world that we're living in at the moment. We still don't know, or I don't trust AI completely at this stage. We're not sure if anyone's really got control of it. And so keeping your eyes and ears peeled for those comments and insights into what's going on for a student. would be really, really helpful and might be you might want to report that as a concern. Okay, so there have been some changes in terminology, and that's really to align with other guidance, for example, the SCND Code of Practice. So, autism spectrum disorder, ASC, ASD, all of those abbreviations for autism spectrum, whatever word you want to put on the end, has been shortened to just autism. And that's really out of respect for the autistic community who prefer to be identified as autistic. I do feel myself that disorder is quite negative, actually. And so I think this is a really positive change. And I would definitely start using that in all your communications with parents, with schools, etc. It shows respect, it shows professionalism, and it shows that you're really up to date as well. I also wanted to share with you the importance of attendance. So, as Elite Tutors, we are now an alternative provision provider. I know that some of you on the call this evening are already working in that branch of what we do. And it's the most impactful and in some ways important work that we do because we're having a huge impact on students' lives. Um, but there are various compliance um, hoops that we have to jump through as an agency, and quite rightly so. There are quality assurance requirements from councils that they need to make sure that whoever they suggest as a provider is doing what the voluntary standards, etc., are requiring. So, recording attendance, I know you do that anyway with lesson reporting. What we do ask anybody who's working in Elite Tutors organisations, which is is the branch that we use for alternative provision, is to let us know if there have been two or more consecutive absences, then to flag that to us in the office because we then need to let councils, schools, etc. know as well. And attendance, it's huge. I think what the government is trying to do quite rightly is to stop children falling through the gaps. I mean, we've seen some horrific news stories where children quite tragically have fallen through the gaps, whether it's education or whether it's help or social services. Sometimes children do unfortunately fall through those gaps, and they're really trying to join things up a little bit more and make things yeah, just a little bit safer, in fact, for students. And now, while we're on the subject of alternative provision has been mentioned in the new KICSI 25 updates. So, whereby previously it was a council's responsibility for students who needed some kind of alternative provision, it's now the school's responsibility to make sure that all of the tutors that are, in our case, working with those students have gone through all of the requisite checks and are completing all of the documentation, such as attendance is a really good example, in the way that that they require. There are some new voluntary standards for alternative provision. We haven't seen this before from a government. They will become mandatory. And so this government is certainly trying to tighten up those areas around a normal school education for students, and quite rightly so. Okay. I did also want to flag child on child or peer on peer sexual violence and harassment. It is a huge issue. It's the UK official government report. Their key findings were that sexual harassment and violence is widespread and underreported. And in the new document, it includes a link which I wanted to share with you in case you needed it. It's Lucy Faithfull's Foundation's Sure Space. And any child or young person who is worried or has had a negative experience in this regard, there's somebody to chat to on this service. So I thought that was a really helpful resource, especially when I delved a little bit deeper into the key findings. The government commissioned Ofsted to produce a report, and that was in 2021. And it's prevalent, and I don't think it's getting any better in schools. One of the key findings from the review was that for some children, incidents are so frequent that they don't actually see the point in reporting them. And that means that the statistics which rely on children reporting, or some children being excluded for, are likely a significant underrepresentation of the true scale of what's going on. I think it's nearly 90% of girls and nearly 50% of boys said being sent explicit pictures or videos of things they did not want to see happens a lot to them and their peers. So it's just something to keep an eye on. And, as I said, with that safe space, you may get a disclosure around this particular area. And I think it is really key that we are aware of what's happening in schools, even though most of us are removed from schools in one way or another. Okay, so I am going to talk about prevent next. So you do have a role in counter-terrorism, and that sounds like quite a big word. But yeah, the prevent duty, if you don't know, is all about protecting students from being radicalized. And, historically, radicalization has been thought of as, groups like ISIS, now called Daesh. I don't know if you know that, but there is a change in name there. But now, with the rise of the far right, with misogyny becoming more and more prevalent, there are other radicalizing groups that I think it's really key that we are aware of so that we can spot those issues before a child goes down, a really horrible radicalization rabbit hole. So things to look out for are, signs of concerns, expressing extreme or intolerant views, using extremist language, changes in behavior, isolation or withdrawal, change of friendship group, strong feelings of grievance, injustice, or a desire to take action. But certainly that hate-filled action or isolation is probably what we might see or hear about. It's very difficult to know what kind of rabbit holes children are going down in, on their phones. And so your role as a tutor, it's part of your wider safeguarding role just to spot those things. You don't have to investigate, you don't have to challenge it at all. You just need to spot it and report it. Yeah, and as I say, those far right groups definitely kind of coming onto the scene a little bit more. But yeah, don't delay in reporting those signs as you see them. Even if if it's nothing, it's worth reporting. I'm just going to play a prevent video for you now so you can have a little look. It's only, I think, about a minute long. And yeah, hopefully this will give you further idea and you won't have to listen to me for a minute. Oh, sorry. Let's go this way. Let's hope we can do this.
When I was 15, I was struggling with who I was, and I wasn't sure how I fitted into society. I felt like everything was against me, and I became isolated from my friends and family. I spent all my time looking at websites and social media that I thought were helping me cope with what I was going through. It made me feel like I was a part of something bigger, like I had a sense of direction again. I was convinced that society was to blame and that violence and hatred were the answer to my problems.
I noticed Adam was acting differently. He had stopped speaking with his friends and he seemed to get angry easily. On a number of occasions, he expressed some extreme ideological views about terrorism that really worried me. I checked my concerns with a colleague, and because of the changes in behaviour and extreme comments, I decided to make a prevent referral to the police. Because I spotted it early, Adam's referral was discussed at a multi-agency panel and he was able to get support. An intervention provider, like a mentor, helped him realise that the people online were sharing distorted stories and hateful beliefs. And so we were able to stop him before he did something he would regret.
Prevent aims to stop people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. Public sector frontline staff should all be aware of their responsibilities under Prevent. So, whether you work in healthcare, education, or for the local authority, we all have a duty to look out for and report our concerns when we see them. Understanding the importance of Prevent and how to identify the signs that someone might be susceptible to radicalisation will mean you can be confident about making a referral. Prevent isn't a tool for spying on people. It's here to keep people safe by using common sense and professional judgment. To find out more, go to gov.uk/prevent.
Hope that's helpful. You can make a prevent disclosure directly on their website, or you can make a concern, report a concern via the tutoring agency, by Elite Tutors as well. Okay, so Ted's gone a little bit wonky. The reason that we've got Ted here now, we're moving on from Prevent, and I want to talk a little bit about how to respond to a disclosure. Not what to do afterwards, not how to record it or report it, but in that moment that you have with that student, whilst they're talking to you about what's on their mind, what's on their heart, what's really troubling them. We use TED because it's a great visual. It's also a great acronym to demonstrate active listening. So what we really need people to do is to listen, to be really completely child-centered, to find out more by using open questioning. And you probably all know that a lot of safeguarding cases get thrown out of court if it ever gets that far, because whoever received the disclosure used closed questions, and that was perceived to be leading. So TED's really helpful with this. You can use the acronym to help with questioning. So T for tell me more about, E for explain what you mean by, and D, describe a little more about. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that the student feels really comfortable in telling you everything, that they're not shut down, they're not led in the way that I just described. Historically, many of our tutors have known how to report a safeguarding concern, but when they've reported it, they have not dealt with it quite in the right way. And so I know that most of you will know this from your general safeguarding training. Certainly if you've had safeguarding training in schools this September, I'm sure that this will have been reiterated. It's really worth reiterating that in a tutoring context, the disclosure still has to be completely child-centered. I know that lots of people want to, and because you have that close relationship as well, you might feel like wanting to show empathy and sharing your own story, or not being completely child or disclosure centered. And I would ask everybody to really remember that to keep the focus entirely on the child, avoid sharing any personal information, whether it's during a disclosure or, any other time that might not be appropriate. But certainly during a disclosure, it's all about what happened to that child. And hopefully, those active listening prompts should be really helpful in that regard. The other thing about during a disclosure, I'm just going to flip to our next slide here, is not to take notes during the disclosure. And I've got a really good analogy here for you. So imagine you are having a lovely glass of wine or a beer or a cup of tea with your best friend, and you start sharing some really deep relationship issue that you're struggling with. Your best friend gets out their notepad and pen and they start making notes. Suddenly, the whole dynamic changes. It feels way more formal, and if it was me, I would probably not share all the things that I perhaps might have done had my best friend not got out their notepad and pen. So you'll need to put down your notepad and pen, give the student your full undivided attention, use active listening strategies described. And as soon as you're in a safe space, a private space, then begin taking notes and writing down everything that you remember from the disclosure. It's well regarded that within a 24-hour window, and certainly that's our company policy, we try to get any safeguarding disclosures and concerns across to schools within 24 hours. So that window is small. And the reason the window is small is because details can be forgotten the longer it's left. And so after your focus has been on that calm, listening, supportive environment, you then move to, when you're in a private space, then write things down as quickly as you can and report it. We have I feel like I need a fanfare here, but we have our new processes for reporting concerns and disclosures. Faye, who is our Deputy DSL, and myself over the summer have been working on a brand new policy, and Tutor Cruncher have implemented some new processes embedded within the Tutor Cruncher system, which actually is a huge improvement on our previous system, which relied on other systems. And I have to say that as you're writing up your lesson, etc., Tutor Cruncher really well as a tutor. It's all in the same space, and so I think it's worth mentioning that it's an upgrade and it's an improvement, and it also means that all of those safeguarding and wellbeing concerns are in one place. What the process looks like is you go on to a student's either lesson or the job itself, and you click on actions. You can see the blue button in the screen there, and then on the drop down menu it will say at the bottom, report a safeguarding or wellbeing concern. As soon as you click on that, it will take you through all of the next steps in terms of what was said, what the disclosure was, what the concern is, etc. You should generally write factually and objectively, and we are impartial in these instances. And it is okay to write your opinion, but you have to make it really clear it's your opinion. So my suggestion is write all the factual things first, and at the bottom, write in my opinion, and then you can write your thoughts there. But you just do need to make that super, super clear. The good thing about having everything all on Tutor Cruncher is that yourselves as tutors can report a disclosure or a concern. Clients, so parents can as well. Students, if they're on the system with our agency, they aren't. And also the team here everybody can report those concerns, and they come straight through to both myself and Faye. So I'm the designated safeguard lead, and Faye is the deputy designated safeguard lead. So they come through to both of us, and then we make the decisions on what to do with those disclosures or concerns. So I think that's about it for updates. I'm just going to head over to the chat and see if there's anything in the chat. I'm just going to stop recording for a moment as well. Bear with me.